Welcome to South Coast Matters. I'm Paul Latendra, and she's
Julie Taylor. And South Coast Matters is a public access program where we bring together civic leaders, business leaders, and citizens to discuss how we can have a positive impact on our South Coast communities.
And we try to have interesting conversations with some interesting people. And today's interesting person is Representative Speaker pro-Tempore of the House, Patricia Haddad. Pat is, she represents Somerset, all of it, 3 precincts in Swansea, correct?
Yep.
All of Dighton,
Yep.
and a couple of precincts in
And 2
Taunton.
in Taunton, exactly.
So
Exactly.
Pat covers a lot of ground.
I try to.
Well, we see that Pat's been a member of the House since 2000, and you've served on quite a variety of committees. So you must have a little bit of expertise in a lot of things.
I probably have mile wide and an inch deep. But that's how it is. You
Yep.
have to know a lot of different things.
That's right.
We'll scratch that inch today, so.
Okay.
So some of the committees you have served on are Human Services and Elder Affairs, Health Care, Medicaid, Natural Resources and Agriculture, Rules, Ethics, and Ways and Means. And prior to becoming the Speaker Pro Tem, you were the Assistant Majority Whip.
That's right. And prior to that, I was the chair of the Committee on Education for 2 sessions. So I've done quite a few things.
Yeah, it
And
sounds
prior
that way.
to that, you taught phys ed
I
and
did.
health at Somerset.
That's
at
right.
the high school.
No, at the middle school. But
Middle
I coached
school.
at the high school for a few years. I coached gymnastics, which was a lot of fun.
Okay.
But 13 years as a middle school teacher. So that's why I've probably never progressed past being 14 in my,
There you go.
I try to keep that energy level.
Good.
Nothing wrong with that.
And you're on the committee for the Recreation Committee?
I
and the
was
school
on
committee.
the Recreation Committee for a while and then on the school committee for 8 years.
So you've been serving the public for a long time.
I like to think I am.
Good. You try.
Well, since we're discussing schools, though, I think we need to give a plug to the national champion, Somerset Berkeley Regional High School. They are the 2015 U.S. Bands Division 1A national champs.
Isn't that great? It's amazing.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And their
Very
first
proud.
Their first place total was 97.425 points, and they got awards for Best Music, Best Percussion, Best Color Guard, and Best Visual. And they were also given the Division 1A Cadets Award. So that's pretty impressive.
That's
It
big
was-
time.
It was very impressive. And they're a moderate size. They're not a huge band. So to be able to be that impressive on a national level, we're really proud of them. We're really. But
Now, I have a question. How do we address you since is it Madam Speaker? Or?
Oh, I would rather people just call me Pat. So please be comfortable. Whatever,
Okay.
whatever. I make the joke because I'm of that age where these things are funny to me, but remember the book Just Call Me Madam? Well, I'll say that very often, and most of the young kids go, huh?
Yeah.
But so whatever makes you comfortable, and I'm very comfortable with Pat. I don't really stand by or stand on my title unless I'm obligated to.
Right.
Good.
Oh, very good.
We're not in the State House now. so-
Right, right.
So, well, we've already started talking about education, so we might as well jump into education. What do you think, Paul?
Education I like talking about because I'm so dumb on it. And I tend to agree
That's
with
not
the last
true.
person I've heard. Because you hear so many good arguments on both sides of whether it's schooling or testing or
Right.
national test, state test, public school or the
Charter
charter
schools, private
schools.
schools.
And I hear an argument for charter schools and I say, boy, that makes a lot of sense. That's a good thing. And then I hear the argument for not charter schools and I say, boy, that's a good thing. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Right
Sure,
from
why
wrong.
don't I talk about that for a second? The charter school movement, started with the Education Reform Act of 1993. And it has, kind of grown and evolved. And when I first got into the legislature, I did not think charter schools were a good idea because I came from a very good school system. So I didn't see the value. And that was probably how I felt for the first probably 3 or 4 years. Then I became the chair of the Committee on Education and did some traveling around the state. And that's when you realize that not everybody is as fortunate as we are down here on well, especially the suburbs of the South Coast. The city of Taunton has a good school system. Dayton has a great school system. Of course, Somerset, I think, has a great school system. And Swansea. Swansea's very good too. But there are places where it's not the same.
The inner cities and
the inner cities, you know, if you go out to some of the rural areas where they just don't have the ability to provide what we provide for our kids. So it became more and more apparent to me that parents needed to have some choices. And so one of the things you have a choice on is any school that becomes a choice school. So for instance, Somerset Berkeley, you can choose to go there. They allow kids to come in, be tuitioned in. Well, they're not tuitioned in, they come in as a very, very small stipend. But again, not everybody has those schools either. So when,
who pays the tuition? Does the town that person's coming from pay the tuition?
The money follows the student.
Okay.
So no matter where you go, the money follows the student. It's the same thing when a student leaves Somerset or Taunton to go to one of the Voc-Tech schools, to BP or to Diamond. The money follows them. And so, you know, yes, communities are sending their money somewhere else. I think if we had a lot more money, you wouldn't see the contention that there is around the issue. But I think that not every community should be subjected to a charter school, because I think many are doing very well. But I think there are those that are performing very low, that their kids should get the opportunity to get out of a school that isn't performing. And so 2 years ago, well, almost 2 years ago now, last session, the House proposed that there be some more charter schools based on if you were a poor performing district. So many of the school systems around here would not even see, you know, the advent of a charter school.
How about the Fall River and New Bedfords?
The Fall River and the New Bedfords, they both have 2 charter schools. I think there might be more, but I'm pretty sure they each have 2 charter schools. In the case of Fall River, the superintendent works very well with the charter movement. It's all about relationships. It's all about trying to do the best for your kids. So while I know people are very, very opposed to them in many places, I rather look at it as you know, on an individual basis and see what communities should have them because they're not performing on their own.
You know, I've done a lot of research on education. I took a policy class with Tom Birmingham at Northeastern.
Yes.
And so, you know, we delved a lot into the charter school movement because he's a proponent of the charter schools. And my question has always been, and I don't think it's really been answered to my satisfaction yet, is if the charter schools work so well on their own, why can't we make that model work within the public school system? Because you take the money out of these underperforming districts to go to charter schools, and you still have an underperforming district, and the problem just gets worse.
Isn't that the $64,000 question? Some of it is that there's not good cooperation between the charter movement and the traditional public schools, so that they're not, those best practices maybe are not going there. But we've found in many instances, one of the big things that came out of the charter school movement was an expanded day, extended day. That's been proven over and over and over again to work. However, always comes down to money. And in the charter schools, they are able to require more of their faculty for less money, unfortunately. So when you get into the traditional public schools, it's harder to pay for that kind of extended day or expanded day. And we've tried a few different models, but you know, like I said, it's one of the examples of something that came out of a charter school that worked.
May I ask, because I'm dumb, now are charter schools non-union teachers?
There are 1 or 2 that are, but for the most part they're not. They're not union, although they, you know, they have every right to organize if they wish. Okay,
but they have certified teachers that are traditionally certified.
Well, I think that's a little. Sometimes there are problems there because they're supposed to be, and some charter schools ask for waivers, and that in my opinion, is not a good thing, that all teachers should be certified. They all should be as qualified and as high quality. I don't think any child should have a teacher that's not high quality. So that is another problem with the charter schools. It's like, you know, there's pros and cons to everything, and that's why I think individually works better, because then you try to build up the pros instead of and tap down the cons, and just try to make it work better for the kids.
But it seems that some school districts have been able to incorporate in, like Orchard Gardens in Boston is one of those schools. It was able to incorporate in the longer school day and more support services for the families that needed them. And they were quite successful. And then I had read a while ago that the principal that was in charge of that turnaround at that school, they lost funding. And he said, I just can't continue to provide this education with reduced funding. And he has since moved on, I believe. But it just, if we have a public school system and a public institution for educating our kids, the more we start to bring it into the private sector and take it away from the public. Yes, charters are somewhat public schools, even though they're run privately. I just get a little uncomfortable with that.
And I think, you know, again, that's one of the cons, that people don't feel that it has the same level of accountability. Now, back in 2010, we worked hard to make sure that every charter school is accountable. We passed a law that says that the demographic of the charter school must mirror the demographic of the district it's in. We closed some charter schools that were not performing well. Just like we take over traditional public schools that are not working well. So we're pushing hard for there to be the same levels of accountability. But you're right, you make a good point, you made several good points, but I think that it's here and we've got to try to make things work, because how do you say to those parents who have children in charter schools and they're very happy with what they have, well, we're just going to now remove any opportunity. I think of it like the old days. When we went to school, we won't say how long ago that was, but our parents had the choice of the parochial schools.
Sure.
And, you know, it was not the same, but it was similar, that, you know, they made a choice not to go to, not to send us to the public schools, to send us to the nuns who had all those rulers and everything that they used to walk around and whack us with. But it's the same kind of thing, that those were choices that they made based on what they thought was good for the family. So I try to think that parents should have a choice and should have an opportunity.
There are no silver bullets, and I think we're always looking for that silver bullet.
That's right, and there aren't any.
I think the biggest lie in all of politics, though, is that we don't have a revenue problem, and I think we do have revenue problems, and I think we need a lot more money for the schools, and we need a lot more money for infrastructures. And,
right. Because when we do a budget, it's a compilation of everybody's sets of priorities. So the governor brings out his set of priorities, which will be really very soon, you know, I think the second or third week of June. Then the House comes forward with their priorities, then the Senate comes forward with their priorities. No one's wrong, they're not wrong, they're just different. And if we all could fund our best, you know, our own priorities, if we had that kind of money, then we wouldn't have some of the, well, I'm hoping that we wouldn't have some of the issues that we have. But it is very difficult to, you know, the pie is only so big, and everybody sort of gets their slice based on need. And I always would like to see a bigger slice going to education, but that's not always possible.
And they just did the review of the Chapter 70 funding, which is the aid the state pays to local schools, and found that it wasn't adequate to fund everything.
And you know, we weren't surprised to find those things out. We weren't surprised that the element that's used in the the element is, I mean, the formula is just elements and things that you multiply by, and it's really simple if you really break it down. But we weren't funding healthcare, and people were falling behind to the level that we said in 1993 that we would do. Special needs. We had at 1990 in 1993 assumed a certain amount for out-of-district placements for special needs. Well, the percentage of kids going out may not have changed. That was probably always going to be pretty close. It's what it now costs has gone up astronomically. So we weren't surprised. The problem now becomes, where do we come up with the money to make those changes? And you know, maybe we can do it over a period of years, which is one of the things that not the new chair, she's been around for a while, but the chair has spoken about. You know, what's a good process to use that could possibly get us to where we need to be and take some of the burden off of the schools?
It'll always be a difficult discussion to have.
But you know, back to how we started this with the Somerset Berkeley Marching Band. We're very fortunate that we have communities, or we have two communities who are very committed to not only the academics of education, but those other pieces that are so important, like music, art, physical education. If you go into some other districts, they're practically non-existent. And that's such a huge part of what a good education is. And so that's where a charter school sometimes fits in. They're able to find a way to bring the arts. I mean, you know, having been a phys ed teacher, I think that teaching kids about being part of a team makes them a better person. We know that there are studies that say that children who are involved in music are usually much better in math. So we've got the proof of what the extraneous things that we do in education, how well they round out a student, how much they work to make a better person. But some communities cannot come up with the money. And I thank the Lord every day that my district has 4 communities who really put a premium on the whole education of that whole child. I knock on wood, if you have any, that I'm very fortunate you know, to work with school systems that are so deeply entrenched in the way they support education as I am. So I don't have to be out begging, please do a better job.
I lived in Dighton for a few years, and they're very proud of their school system.
They have another great band, you know, a really good band. Taunton, you know, between their sports teams and their bands, are very, very good, as Case happens to be exceptional in drama. So, you know, they're all things that really grow a child.
When we think back on our school years, I mean, do we remember the classroom moments or the
I remember the plays,
extracurricular moments?
I remember the plays, being on the basketball team, sure.
Games.
I only remember a couple of nuns, but that's probably not for the best reason. They might be out there.
And again, since we're on education, we might as well bring up the other contentious subject, Common Core. Maybe you can just talk a little bit about
MCAS.
that. Yeah.
Well, you know, this isn't probably the people aren't going to like this, but I've always felt that accountability is necessary. And when I was the chair way back when, that's when they started to talk about the Common Core. And I always felt like, well, if they had just used Massachusetts and everything would have been fine, because there were 49 other states that didn't. I remember going to a conference and sitting very quietly, not talking about where I came from, and people in the room turned as they're going on and on about, you know, what should we do to have a standard for everyone in the country nationally. And a man, I don't even know where he was from, turns around and goes, yes, we know, you're from Massachusetts and you want to do it your way. And I just, well, not that I want to do it my way, I just happen to think we do a nice job.
It works.
Yes,
It works. I mean, we've been #1 for how many years? You know,
a long time.
So I think that we do need a standard. And I think we do need tests, because we have no other way to gauge. We really don't have any other way to gauge. So then what's the right test? I think the way we're going now to create some kind of a hybrid that takes the best of MCAS and the best of PARC and brings them together, it'll take a little longer, but I think that that's the right way to go. Because we do have things in MCAS that are working, and they're showing growth, and they're showing where a student is going. And then PARC takes it to another level, because we're trying to make sure that kids can reason. And it's not just here's the test, here's the answer, write an essay. It's here's the test, here's the answers. Let's write an essay that shows you know where you're going with this. So I think that's going to be difficult.
Are the teachers teaching just to those tests, though?
I think some feel they are. Some feel they are. But if you're teaching from a good curriculum, you should be covering a lot of the things that kids need to know. But you know, I mean, I was always a pretty good test taker. I don't know if I know that much, but I know that I could kind of critically think through or do by process of elimination or whatever it was. Well, we've got to take kids beyond what my ability was to do, you know, a multiple choice or fill in the blank or whatever. We've got to, it's a different world. We've really got to make sure, because they're competing now not against anybody in their neighborhood and really not against people in their state anymore. They're competing nationally and globally for the jobs that are out there. I tell the story about my kids are now 35 and 33. But when they were in school, so one graduated in 1998 and the other in 2000, and I never thought, oh, they're going to be out, you know, doing things globally or whatever. Well, my son ended up being a merchant marine going around the world. My daughter has had jobs where they, her last job in particular, where they interacted with people in Japan. So she'd be getting up in the middle of the night to have a conference call. And so even now, even if you are a hands-on person, so say you're an auto mechanic, you're not just a little auto mechanic anymore. You know about the computer. You know how to diagnose. You have to have those critical skills. So I think that there's a place for it, because I think that every single person, regardless of what you do, you need to have some further skills. It's not good enough just to be able to follow directions, which that's how I survived, being with the nuns, doing what I was told, right? But no, I do think that you know, being able to think critically is really, really important. So we've got to teach kids to think critically.
Good. And we still need that silver bullet, though.
If you come up with it, you will be the richest man in the world, because I don't think there is one. No, you know, many countries do things differently and they get good results, and I think it's just, there isn't a cookie cutter way to handle it.
No, what works in Somerset won't work in Boston, and what works in Boston won't work in New Bedford.
I had my share of debates with Mitt Romney, who really felt that you could take the teachers from Wellesley or Newton and put them in an inner city and things would change. And I kept telling him, you know, that would be, if that were true, that would be wonderful. But it's not true. It's not true. In the inner cities, you have people with the same skills, with the same creativity, with all of the things that they have in Newton and Wellesley. I think you said a little while ago, the wraparound services that people need are, well, you don't know what they are. And they vary from place to place, and they change. I mean, who would have thought 5 years ago that we would have been tearing our hair out over the opioid problems and talking about having Narcan in schools, in high schools? No one could have foreseen that. And so, you know, it's an ongoing thing. We really need to change and evolve. Education needs to change and evolve. The way we prepare teachers, because we're kind of behind on that, because the academics can't keep up with how things are changing. The services that you need in a school that you just didn't need before.
Incredible.
Right, and you know, it's really, really, and I don't want to, you know, overdo it, but it's a different place out there. And I joke about, you know, when I went to school, when I was in 7th and 8th grade, I actually did know everything because there was so much less to know. And now kids, you know, we're asking them to grow up sooner. We're asking them to be mature sooner. And we say we don't. You know, we say we want our kids to be kids, but the world around them is forcing this on them.
And the rate of change just keeps
Yes.
accelerating. I mean, 3 years ago, technology is just gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I updated my computer over the weekend. I went from Office 15 to Office 16. It's like in 2 days, it took me 2 days to get it done. But it's,
Yeah, and they'll be at 17 sooner than any of us
stuff
want.
I saved in 2010,
Right.
God tried to drag it up again. But,
Yeah.
You know, kids don't realize how difficult it was way back when, before technology, to write a paper and
Yes.
have the correcting thing in the typewriter.
typing a
and-
paper
Oh.
and getting no
Kids got
no
it easy.
typos on a typed paper
Right.
with corrected type.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I got for my graduation from high school, a typewriter. And now our kids are walking around with computers in their hands, which even when my kids when my son, my younger of the two, graduated in 2000, I gave the speech at graduation, and I found it the other day. I'm reading it, and I said, and in several years, they say you will be carrying computers around with you. And they are.
Wow, who knew?
And they are. I was a prophet,
You
even
were
back
ahead of
then.
your time, yes.
Even back then.
Yes.
I remember in the business world, same thing. I remember
Yes.
hearing at meetings, you guys will have computers pretty soon. And
And,
we
and it-
thought they'd save us a lot of time. They did save us a lot of time, but we got 10 times more stuff to do. So,
well,
yeah,
exactly.
you could work 24/7 once you get your computer.
And sometimes I think I do. Because I go home at night because I get so many emails. I'll sit with the TV on and delete emails that I don't need, or I can
Yeah.
take care of right then and there, answer emails. My husband claims that he hasn't really seen my whole face in quite some time. Probably true, because you just feel like, I feel like I have to do it to keep up.
Yeah, that's true. Well, this has been very interesting talking about all these education issues, and we've just barely touched the
yes.
surface.
Scratch the
and
surface.
some of these issues don't necessarily affect most of our South Coast communities, but we need to at least care about these things because they affect us in a
Absolutely.
much greater way economically and socially and all kinds of ways.
Education is truly the economic driver.
Yeah, it is.
Truly.
It is.
We want to thank you very much for being with us today. We will get you back, and we won't even let you change up before you come back. How's that?
That's fine with me.
But
My
it will
pleasure
play.
to be here.
It'll play a couple of weeks off from when this is played.
Okay.
And I'm Paul Latendra, and I want to thank Representative Pat Haddad for being with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We also want to say a special thank you to the people at TCAM here in Taunton. They've been very good to us, getting our project off the ground, the South Coast Matters. I think this is about our 15th show, and without TCAM here in Taunton, we'd still be in my living room trying to figure out how we're going to do this. So special thanks to Kim Murphy, Ben Fortier, and Walter Sabina from TCAM for the use of their studios. Fabulous studio here.
Yes, very nice.
Thank
It's
you.
been very good.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
And I'm Julie Taylor, and look for us on Facebook under South Coast Matters. And you can reach us at southcoastmatters@gmail.com for any comments, questions, anything.
Good night.
So good night.